So welcome to the Lewis Girls panel. I would have wanted you guys to meet my sisters virtually because they're basically the Lewis Girls, but they're not available tonight, which is totally fine. But thanks so much for joining, everybody. How you guys doing? You're good? I know I asked you guys that before we started screen recording, but you guys all right?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. We're ready.
That's good. That's good.
Definitely.
Yes. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go over this topic of domestic violence because that's one of the posts that, or the most popularist topics that, came up in the past few weeks. And I mean, over the course of the next few weeks or whenever we decide to come back together and talk, we'll be talking about a bunch of different things. But right now, I think for me, I recognize that domestic violence within what we call the Black community or the melanated community, abuse, assaulting, hurting each other is very prevalent, and it just seems very normalized. And I thought it would be important for us to discuss. Now, I know that right now 7:10, and with Zoom it kicks us out at around 7:40. So I'm not going to stay too long talking. I would want to hear you guys tell me your perspective on things and your experiences. Yesterday, Nancee was on the chat, and she gave great insight, and I'm looking forward to hearing from her today too. So what I'm going to do is ask you guys each just to, obviously your names are on the camera or on the screen, but just tell me a little bit about what you do, because I'm going to be adding your businesses to the link in the YouTube on the YouTube video, so that whenever people watch the video, they can always reach out to you guys if they have any questions or interest or anything. And we're all coming from different spaces. So Nancee had introduced herself yesterday, but I'll have you start, Nancee, and then I'll go over to Elijah, and then Sarah, and then you, Donnie Godflow. All right. So Nancee, you can start.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Nancee Moss. I am in Georgia. I call myself a first-generation American. My parents are from the island, Haiti and Dominican Republic. I am a mother of 3. I am a full-time employee, no business of my own yet. I care for my mother as well. And I'm trying to think of what else to say. Oh, and the reason why I'm excited about this panel is because I don't say a victim, but I used to be in an abusive relationship. And unlike many others, I was able to get out, and I would love to help others get out as well.
Thank you, my love. Thank you. And Elijah.
Yes, good evening. My name is Elijah. You can call me Eli. I'm originally from New York City, Brooklyn, but now I reside in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm currently in a new position working as a project coordinator for Temple University. On the side, I'm an IBO business owner selling Amway products through the worldwide group. And I work on music. I'm a singer, and I'm just into the arts and things of that nature. And I'm very interested in this panel because I also at one time was in not abusive relationship, but I've seen people that I know and closely love be in abusive relationships. So I thought this would be a great panel to join, and I'm appreciating to be a part of it.
And I'm so happy that you are a part of it, Elijah, because you are super intelligent. Talking to you for how many years now on IG? A long time.
A long time.
Right? And I think that's the same for a lot of us on here, where it's just like we've been connected for so long, and now this is, so it's nice to hear from you. Sarah.
Hey everyone. So as everyone knows, my name is Sarah. You can call me Sarah. My full name is Sarah St. Cyr. A little bit about me. I am born and raised in Toronto, Canada. My background is full Haitian, full Haiti in my blood. What I'm doing right now is I am writing an all Black or all melanated fantasy novel series because I have designated myself as a storyteller. So that is what I am doing to contribute to the community. And I am also a full-time caregiver in this household. I do not currently have any businesses yet, but we are definitely going in that trajectory. And as I say me and my ancestors and family. And I have definitely seen lots of different types of abuse around me. Thankfully, it has not happened to me personally, but I am definitely aware of the, misgivings that are entrenched in our community. And I definitely have a very interesting perspective to provide this panel. And I'm really happy to hear what everyone else's experiences and what they have to say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. And I look forward to reading your books. That's for sure.
Thank you. Yes, they're definitely in the works. It's going to take some time, but we're getting there.
I look forward to it. And Donnie, Godflow.
Yes. I'm Donnie. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I'm a personal trainer, plant-based, holistic living. And also outside of personal training, what I do is I make cosmic apparel t-shirts dealing with individual energy far as your moon, sun, and rising, and other aspects, everything is custom made, dealing with astrology.
Nice. How long have you been a trainer for?
So for me, I've been working out for over a decade, but training, I say like the last 25 years.
Okay, that's cool. Well, thank you. And Jason. You there, Jason?
Yes, I am.
Yay.
How is everyone?
Good.
Had some old man technical difficulties over here.
That's okay. You're fine.
I am a Army Aviation veteran. I was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York, circa 1979. So my dad was also a veteran, as well as my grandfather, and the abuse issue is very close to home. First 5 years of my life, my dad was very physical with my mother. I witnessed that myself. And then he changed. He had I guess you could say a religious conversion and started being a real, father and husband. But he taught me something, and my mother concurred. He always said, hey, you don't hit females, but if they hit you, you do what you got to do. And I had a revelation in middle school where I just, I had 2 fist fights with females in middle school. And that last one let me know that I got to do this. This was too easy. This is not something that, it just didn't feel right. It was like, I know they started it, but I don't have to do this. This is not something that, felt natural. And so I let that teaching go. And, ever since, it seems God has put me in places where I have had to intervene quite a few times as an adult in domestic situations where men are going off physically on women in certain cases where men and women are going off on children. And, and I found myself in those situations where, when I was a kid, I would mind my business, as they say, because I didn't want to get hurt. Then I got to that place where I'm just like, well, when I was getting bullied, I was like, it would have been nice if somebody helped me out. And a few times someone did. So I just started taking that tack where I'm not just going to take a passive role when someone is getting brutalized or abused. Because if it were me in that situation, or now I'm a father and a husband, I would want somebody to help out, And so that's my tact on that. As far as businesses go, I used to be an audio engineer. Still am, just not commercially. I've worked with quite a few people, Elephant Man, the late Craig Mack, rest in peace. and a few notable others. Daddy Yankee, for those of you who are into reggaeton and whatnot. So I've had quite a colorful life, you could say, especially being in New York City. Seen it all, done it all.
Well, thank you, Jason. And I think what you just mentioned, as a male, you experiencing that kind of back and forth with females growing up, or just that one experience. As a man, what would you say to another man who would feel it's justified to do something like that to a woman? Like, or have you ever come into contact with that, and what have you said to them, and what's their rationale behind it?
A lot of times with the males, the abusers, what I have noticed is they have a very adolescent mindset toward the whole thing. And I say adolescent because, like I said, that last experience in middle school, I had that revelation where it was just too easy, because the two girls that I had gotten in fights with in middle school they weren't small. They were pretty big. And they were known to do that. And people were afraid of them. I was a small kid, relatively speaking. And it was very easy for me to dispatch of those two. And when I saw just how easy it was, it just clicked in my head. I'm like, no, I'm a little guy, and I pretty easily took care of this situation. So I'm like, if my little self can do this, there's no excuse for these bigger guys to be whooping on these girls. It don't make sense, and what I found with these guys who want to go off on these women is something deeper than whatever the situation was at the time. They had a deeper bitterness and hatred to females in general, and that is what needed to be resolved. And, and I would try to rationalize with those who had, these opinions like, yeah, but if a woman do this, I'm like, dude, it's like if a kid kicked you in the shin, would you just go off and beat this, living mess out of the kid? It's kind of the same situation. When it comes to the power disparity between males and females, I look at it like that, and I would tell them that, like, these women are no match for you. They aren't. Just walk away. It's not that serious. And if you think somebody's antagonizing you to do something, would you give them that control? Why would you do that? And so that actually woke more of them up than anything, is the idea that someone is trying to control you by trying to control your reaction to what they're saying to you, or your perceived manipulation. Otherwise, when it came to the abusers, I really didn't care what they believed. My thing was stop, or I'm going to stomp you out. And, there really wasn't a whole lot of talking there.
Right.
But as a concerned decipher and, just chopping it up with other males about the issue, it was really just getting them to see and understand that, women are not a match. You look at them like, physically speaking, just physically. Look at them like children. They can't hurt you. They really, if they don't have a weapon in their hand, a deadly weapon, they can't hurt you. Right. They really can't. You can learn all the self-defense you want. And I'm not saying women shouldn't. It might be enough to get you out of a sticky situation. But when it comes down to a one-on-one throwdown, that is not something I advise any female to do with any male, especially if that male is in a rage.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because one of the comments that was underneath my post is that one of the girls, she said that she met someone, or she knew somebody that was in an abusive relationship, and the person, I guess their partner, came after them, and the girl went for her gun to defend herself, and that man used the gun against her. But that person, they weren't able to talk today, but I would have preferred if they spoke. But aside from that, like, I hear what you're saying in terms of power disparity. I like that term, and I think I'm gonna use that. Elijah, you said that you experienced abuse. Do you mind sharing, or Did you want to give
Sure.
Okay.
No problem. Definitely. I mean, my relationship that I had previously, I was in a same-sex relationship. It was more mentally, and then there were those moments of abuse, as far as attacks, not where I was being beat belligerently, but attacked in general, and it was very sporadic. And for me, that is still considered a form of abuse. And it did get to points where like a hammer was pulled out, and I had to defend myself. And I went into defense mode when it was absolutely necessary for me to do that, because I'm not going to stand and let nobody beat me up. And cops was called. I was in this relationship, and I can laugh about it now because it's crazy, but not in a funny way. If that makes sense to anyone, where
absolutely
I'm in a car with associates, and because they're jealous, because they were basically jealous of the attention that people gave me, and they stuck their hand from the back of the car and punched me in the side of my face. So my reaction to that was pull over and to basically fight them and defend myself. And the cops came, and I was blessed at the time that 2 female cops showed up, and they was like, what's going on? And they understood the situation. And actually they locked him up instead of me. And that was basically the moment when I realized this is not a safe relationship for me, and I needed to exit from it. And at the time, actually, I was unemployed. So it made it even more difficult to get out of there immediately, especially for a male. Like for women, people may say, oh, they can go to their family, they may have resources, but men don't really have or know where to go for those resources, because it's not really discussed when it comes to men. Rather, they are in a same-sex relationship, or if it's a female abusing a male. And that happens as well, but it's not talked about. So for me, it was like, okay, I don't want nobody to know. So I got to find a way to get out of here and play the exit role, and which I eventually did. I would say probably like 6 to 7 months, because like I said, I was unemployed. I had nowhere to go. I had no money, and I didn't want to tell my family or friends about it. I think they had an inkling of it, one of my best friends, because him and his wife showed up to my house out of the blue and was like, what's going on? We're not hearing from you like we normally do, but I didn't want to tell them that. So it's also finding that strength sometimes to fight back, and the strength to get out of the situation. And I don't think everyone has that strength or have the resources or the person to reach out to talk about it.
How long were you in that relationship with your partner?
5 years.
And when did it start to become physical? Was it like immediately?
I would say the last year and a half. The last year and a half. So it just came out of the blue. And I think, like I said, I feel it was definitely a jealousy thing. I have a big personality, and I was more educated than him, went to school, all those different things. Not saying that means anything, but I think there was a jealousy because of that. And little things that they would say, oh, you think you're better than me, or just before I had lost my job, I had bought a car, and I had this car, and it's like, oh, well, I had new cars before and things of that nature. And I'm like, well, I never said anything about the car. Like, I never said you never had a new car. I just was like, take care of my car. So it was like little things like that would make them snap and go off.
Right. And Nancee, I see that you have your hand up.
Mm-hmm. I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question for Elijah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I know you said that the abuse started like the last year and a half. But was there anything that hinted towards that, or did you catch any red flags before it got to the abusive part?
Yes, but to be honest with you, I didn't know what it was. And the moment that it happened, it was later on that I really found out. And when I really, really found out, I actually ran into their ex, who was a female. Mm-hmm. And she told me stories about what happened in their relationship. And I was like, oh, so in my mind, I was like, oh, he just have a crazy thing going on, and he's just showing it now. Like, never had any issues before. It just started to happen at that moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, I'm going to ask real quick, and then I'll go on to Sarah because I'll definitely love to get her perspective. So you're saying the ex-girlfriend that you bumped into, she said that wasn't a part of their relationship?
It was.
Okay. I thought that's what I heard.
It was a big part of their relationship. Like, in a sense where they were always fighting, and he would be fighting her and beating her in the house in front of the kids and things of that nature. And I was like, really? And so when she told me, I was like, okay, I see where this can possibly go. And like I said, I'm not going to let nobody beat me up. And I didn't want to go to jail because the incident that last happened was when I grabbed the hammer to defend myself.
Right. And it's funny because in yesterday's discussion, that actually came up in terms of the habit of abuse, where it's either the person came out of a family that was a part of that, or they just had that kind of habit within other relationships, and now they're taking it from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship. So it's interesting that you say that. Sarah, I definitely want to hear your perspective on things. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to drop the other link in the text so that we can, if you guys want to, we can jump on another 40 minutes of the discussion because it's pretty good if you guys want to. No pressure though. Okay, so Sarah, you can go ahead.
Awesome. So for me, thankfully, type abuse hasn't been inflicted on me and my close family. And in the event of whatever may occur, life's happenings, if it were to occur in my family or friendship circle, I now know some of the tools that we can use to employ to get these situations handled. But before I go down that route, to talk about, the abuse that I saw was with my best friend. She was the one being abused, and every relationship that she got into, when it ended, she would rush into another one. And when that was the case, it would just progressively get worse and worse until when she ended up in a relationship when I was on my way to college. And that relationship was kind of her first physical relationship because she was dealing with online dating most of the time. And this man was sexually abusive, mentally abusive, emotionally abusive, the whole nine. For her, she didn't take it that seriously. Her perspective was a little bit more, calm, quote unquote. It's kind of hard to describe that nuance, but for me, it was so jarring to see because I was doing my best, my hardest to pull her out of that. And from when you're in that cycle, when you see someone in that cycle, and it's so hard to pull them away because you're not close to them, or you're not physically close to them, so you can't actually go and save them, or they're just not listening to you, wherever you may be. It is so disempowering to watch. And it was like this for months. I would give her paragraphs like, you have to love yourself. You need to get out of this. This is not for you. And she would agree and then get right back into the whole mess. And it was kind of like a cycle of a week where everything is good. But then after that, it would start to go downhill again and then go back up. It was this constant roller coaster ride. And at one point, because I was young and there are many things that I had to take care of, and I was, going into college, I had to actually tell her, you know what, like, I have to pull away from this. There's nothing I can do. And it is spilling into our communication and into our bond. And, I have to, help and heal other people. And you don't, with the actions that you're dealing with, but the words you're saying are contradicting your actions. It is showing that you truly are not ready for my help. You're not ready to be helped. And I had to leave. And that moment when I cut it off, it was such a hard moment for me because I was in tears, you know, just seeing your best friend, somebody you've known for so long, being in this cycle, but you can't do anything. It is such a disempowering feeling. And I understand how it feels to just sit and watch this happen, like all around you, and you don't even know what you can even say or do because you're trying so hard. Granted, thankfully, a few years past, maybe 2 years, we actually reached back out to each other, and she was no longer in that relationship because she had to see what she needed to see by herself. I didn't get the full details of what happened in their separation, but she moved on from that kind of cycle and is seeking people who are more, you know, more calm, who aren't dealing with these kinds of traumas and inflicting pain, however that manifests onto her. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
You know, I appreciate that perspective, being the friend, seeing your friend go through that, and that's you looking in on the relationship and having that perspective. Nancee, I just wanted to get your perspective. Like, did you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was doing my breathing while Sarah was talking. So I had a friend like Sarah when I was in the military, and when I was in the military, before I married my spouse, I would vent to this battle. She was my battle buddy. She was really my friend. She was someone I would talk to. And she would always tell me, Nancee, if you're not happy, if you're always arguing with this person always making you cry and blah, 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 why are you with him? And you know what? I never stopped to think why I am with him. All I knew is that my mom said he was good. This person was a good security. He could provide good security. He's a good father figure. He's a great romanticizer. He was like my knight in shining armor, if you will. And I was so desensitized to someone putting me down verbally, to someone playing psychological games. It's like you're talking to a wall. This person asked me over and over, Nancee, why are you doing this? Why? And I would walk into a DFAC. A DFAC is a cafeteria. And when I was in the military, and I was in full military gear. And whenever I walked in, because of my confidence, my whatever you call it, people would stare at me. People would try to talk to me. And you know what? My ex, he didn't say anything. But as soon as we got to the car, you know who got cussed out? I did. And that became normal to me. So what I took from Sarah is, it was a great thing you tried to do for your friend, but we just don't see it because we've become desensitized to all these types of abuse. And when somebody gives it to us, we accept it and we like, okay, yeah, he might be talking to me crazy or whatever, but at the end of the day, he does this. We weigh it out. And to us, the American dream is bigger than the abuse.
I see.
I agree with this perspective because that's exactly what I learned after much later down the road, that, you know, it's this, women or men in these relationships, it's just an everyday thing, and they don't have time to breathe to actually see, wait, this is not working for me. So thank you so much for that input.
No problem. Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, because the thing is, as friends looking in, it could seem like for example, when Sarah pulled herself away, somebody else might say, well, Sarah, you shouldn't have done that, right? But then Nancee's giving the perspective of, you know what, I hear you, Sarah, because when I was in it, I just couldn't pull myself away from it. So we have about 2 minutes left. Jason, as you're listening to this, like, what's coming to you? Did you ever have to talk anybody out of a situation like this before, or?
I have literally physically had to get involved. I've had to put hands on men. I've had to get between men and the women they were beating on, and then try to talk sense to the woman. And in at least one of the situations, the cycle of abuse was well on its way because, in the one case, there was a woman who became my neighbor. I was renting a house. Okay. As I was saying, I was, very young man. I think I was maybe 19 years old, and I'm renting this house, or a basement of a house. And the owners moved somebody in the main floor. There was a woman. She was 911 operator. Irony. And she had a 1.5-year-old daughter, and the daughter's father, and they all lived in there together. They'd spend all night having sex, all morning fighting. He would end, the fights in the morning by knocking her out and then leave. And I would hear all of this commotion every night. And, one night coming home, I see her walking with the child. She's pushing an empty stroller because she's holding the child in her hands. And I mean, she's crying, bawling, snotting, everything. And I take the child and we walk back to the house. She explains that he left, went to his mama's and all of this. And I'm like, you don't need this. You don't need all of this, And I was torn because every day after they would go through this cycle, she would then continue the abuse on the child by screaming and cussing this child out. And I mean, all of the words, like she was grown up, and I would tell her, I'm like, why are you talking to this child like this? This child ain't doing nothing. She know what I mean. I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman she's gone. And this particular night, she's bawling and she's mad at him and she's calling him and he's hanging up on her. And I mean, she's just totally, torn apart by this. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, good riddance, And so I'm sitting with her in the bedroom, and sure enough, she calls him again. And I tell her, well, just hang up. And he must have heard me. So he comes to the house. He comes to the window. He sees us in the room. So he comes to the front door. I told her, don't open the door. I go down to my, to my little apartment to call the cops and then to go to the front door and confront him. As soon as I get off the phone with the operator, I get upstairs. She's laid out on the floor. She done opened the door and he done knocked her out. And I'm just like, so I go to and run up, grab something out the kitchen, and I run to the door. And of course he, starts taking off, and then the police arrive. So, but from that point on, I'm like, look, I live here. I don't want this man in here. You can do whatever you want in your relationship. This man ain't good. He ain't healthy. He's a crackhead. He's whooping on you, and, this is not healthy. This man could kill you. She was not a very big woman. And so I, and I'm a young man, I'm dealing with this, and I'm like, no, you can't. This is not healthy for you. This is not healthy for your baby, because he's whooping on you and then you're taking it out on the child. How do you think this child is going to grow up? This is not okay. You have to get some help and get out of this situation. And long story short, for a while, it seemed like the message was sticking. I hadn't seen him for some weeks. And then I go to, one day to get up, go to work. And the light's on, but she's not there. I'm like, so I peek into a room and he's laying on the bed, watching his little girl. I'm just like, she don't let this bozo in the house. And at that point, I had to, as the sister said, I had to distance myself from that situation. Because I'm like, I'm going to end up going to jail for somebody who's just going to run right back into the fire, And, I ended up confronting him at his job and letting it be known in no uncertain terms. I don't care what y'all's deal is. I'm not putting up with it. I'm going to do something, and you're not going to like what I do. And he never gave me another problem. He never, whatever he did it outside of that house. I never saw it. I never heard it. And I eventually would find her some years later without her daughter, which was a pretty consistent pattern because that was the last of her 6 children. She had custody of none of the previous 5. And, after going through that situation, I saw why. And it was a sad and unfortunate situation, but it kind of taught me something. And I would, the other incidents that I ended up getting involved in the years after that, I started to see the same pattern. Women who were used to being abused before they met this person. So this person just came in and filled a void. These are people who were abused in their childhood. They don't know how to operate outside of that environment. They don't have the coping skills to, be in a healthy relationship. And so, if they even find themselves in one, they'll do things to try to sabotage it because it just doesn't feel right to them. Or they'll just leave. And we're like, this is not fulfilling me. This is not doing what I needed to do. And sometimes the comfort of familiarity puts people in very dangerous situations that they really don't want to be in, but they don't know how not to be in. And so I think the, things we have to figure out as a people and as a community is how do we get abusers and abusees to understand that what they are doing is exactly dysfunctional cycle, that what they're doing is not healthy, explain to them why it's not healthy, and then give them the tools they need to change their mindset, because that's what's going to need to happen. Because you can intervene in all of that and you'll save them for a day. They'll go right back to it the next day.
Elijah, you had your hand up. Jason, thank you. Thank you for that input. I really appreciate it because you're coming from another perspective. And that was actually pretty deep because it leads into the cycle that I think, Nancee, you had put in the chat, the dysfunctional cycle and the intergenerational traumas that come with it. But Elijah, go ahead.
Yes, I totally agree as far as the dysfunctional cycles. I think also where people are dealing with mental health issues, and as well as sometimes abusers hurt people. That saying where people who have been abused abuse others, or people who have been in abusive households, it's normal to them. And I've seen that from people that I know who have been abusers and have accepted the abuse because it becomes normal. I have a friend who grew up, his grandfather abused the grandmother, the father abused the mother. And so in relationships, he thought it was not normal not to have someone to choke him or to fight him or something like that, and or those types of actions, which is abuse. So then you also have the ones who are dealing with some with mental health problems that find it to be okay or to accept the abuse or to be abusing others. So we have to look at that as well.
I absolutely agree with that, with both of this perspectives in terms of the mental health and so the mental health of the abuser and the mental health of the abusee. I like that word. Again, going back to something Nancee had brought up, and also you, Elijah, you had brought up, was the pattern. And so, for example, there was, I don't want to put too many people's information out there, but there was a family that I was very close to. And the young man in the family, he's an older man now, but at the time, I remember there was a really odd experience that I had with him, and I didn't know he was abusing the woman that he was with. And I remember coming into the house, and when you come into the house, the bathroom's on the left, and there's a bedroom right in front of you, and on the right, there's a small hallway, and you get to the living room and the kitchen. And I remember I came into the house, and I stood in the hallway, and in my peripheral vision, I saw the man standing in the bathroom with the door like halfway open, and he was naked, and he was looking at me. And this is all in my peripheral vision. And when I tell you my body just started to shake because I was like, what is going on here? It was insane because I had to do the woman's hair. So I walked into the living room and just had to completely shut off what just occurred because I had to do her hair. Leading forward, whenever she wanted to do her hair, I would try to avoid it or ask if I can do it somewhere else aside from her home. And down the line, I found out that this man, he would put his hands on her, I guess, regularly. And apparently the mother to this young woman, she told her daughter, because I guess probably from her own experience, she noticed something off about the man, and the daughter didn't want to listen, but she stayed with him. And like I said, down the line, I found out that, he used to put his hands on her. And what occurred was the children, the stepchild to this man, he ended up, he became schizophrenic, because he was actually, from what I learned, he used to have to jump on this man to pull this man off of his mother. So now he has either schizophrenia or bipolar. The son that came from the man and this woman, he now either has schizophrenia or bipolar. And the youngest daughter doesn't have anything. Now my mom has schizophrenia, so I know how intense schizophrenia can be. So it's like what we see is a continuous pattern of behavior, and if it's not the child growing up to become an abuser, the child ends up taking on something that affects the mental health that can turn into abuse unintentionally. Does that make sense? So I don't know. Did that make any sense, what I just said?
Yes, it does.
It did.
Because I feel like there is the normalization of this abusive behavior is just so detrimental that we're not taking it seriously enough, because it's really the children that have to grow up and either become abusers themselves, or they just kind of they expect it to happen to them, similar to what Elijah was saying. Am I saying a lot? I feel like I've just like completely said so many things on top of. Nancee, did you want to?
No, I was agreeing with you. And when I said, I'm going to give a quick take because I don't want to take up too much time. But what you said is exactly correct. When my mom came to this country, she was like 14. And when she met my father, she was, when she had her first child, she was like 15. And back in the days, they messed up her paperwork, and they said that she was 10 years older than but she wasn't. So I say that to say that she was a child when she started having children. My father, may he rest in peace, he was very, very abusive, and she almost killed him before she left him. And then the next relationship she was in, same thing. She almost killed my stepfather before she left him. Now, when we growing up, we saw all this abuse. This was normal to us. So when I started dating and whatnot, this was normal behavior. When I was in school around my peers, somebody looked at me different. Oh, you think you bigger? I'm up. I'm fighting. I'm fighting teachers. I'm fighting security. I was the one that was always fighting because that was my language of communication. You know where I learned that from? My mother and my father. I didn't learn the emotional intelligence and all that. So basically what I'm saying is it is a cycle. We see it and then we repeat it. And not only that, I decided to break the cycle in my family. I don't want to start crying or anything. I'm not that emotional person, but I had to break that cycle in my family. After I moved from that environment, I met my knight in shining armor. I had to deploy, and I had to leave my children with my mother. And you know what happened? My little brother is the same one assaulted my two daughters. So after I pulled myself out of that environment, I thought everything was okay. I thought, I could start living the American dream. No, it always comes back and it haunts you. So yes, we don't take this serious enough. I don't even go on social media now because I feel like everyone has lost it. Everyone has lost it. Being called, excuse my language, bitches and hoes and sucking, that is like normal. So it is a cycle, and you're right, we're not taking it serious enough. My mom is to the age where she realized what she did is wrong. And now she is the one sitting at the table. Nancee, do this. Paula, do this. Go talk to your daughter. Go talk to your son. Go fix the relationship with your spouse. She is the one trying to help us mend it. So that's why I said we need elders in our communities, because some of us don't know what right look like. And we're spreading our toxicity, and then we're making it worse than it actually is.
Wow. So wow. Jason, you have your hand up. You have something.
She really said something very important right there. Taking it serious. We have to take it serious. Even those of us who have not been in the situations have to. And I say that because I lost a coworker, you know, to violence. And this is why I say that too, because in her case, he had never laid a hand on her before, but he had really strange behaviors leading up to. They were married. They had 2 children, 3 and 8. And, you know, she decided that, you know, the relationship wasn't working. So she filed for separation. So they were estranged, but she said, you know what? He's a good father. I don't need to put him out. So they both lived in the house together, estranged. She lived her life, and, you know, all she asked him to do was watch the children while she worked. But the things that he would say to her and ask her when she would come to the job and talk about it, I said, no, that guy is dangerous. You need to put him out of the house. You need to put him out of the house. She didn't see the danger because he had never raised a hand to her, you know? And sure enough, one day, as was his, you know, MO, he, you know, grills her about her personal business and gets upset. She decides, you know, whatever, you know, I do me, it's, you know, none of your business. She goes and she, you know, see her boyfriend, whatever. He finds them. He runs in there with a gun. He shoots him and he shoots her, but she doesn't live. Then he proceeds to take the police on a high-speed chase on a highway. When he realized he wasn't getting away, he pulls over and he kills himself. You know, and it was something where the entire time she didn't see the danger. She didn't take it seriously. And when I heard the news, I had, you know, this was in California. I had already moved back to New York. So when I had went to ask mutual friends how she was doing, they were surprised that I didn't know what happened. And they showed me the news article. And I mean, I was broke up. Like, I was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading, because I literally told her, put that man out. He's dangerous. And she didn't understand what I meant, you know, because not all abusers are going to show you the violence that's in them. You know, you have to kind of pay attention to some of the words, the passive aggressiveness, the demeaning, you know, things that they'll say to you, you know, and sometimes, you know, pay attention to them looks. They give you them dirty, evil stares like they would if they could. Take that serious. You know, that is not something that, you know, normal people do. They don't look at their loved ones like they want to kill them. You know, that's something that has to be in your heart. And if it's there, all it needs is the right catalyst, the right time and opportunity. And unfortunately for her, that time and opportunity was when he had finally, his ego just couldn't take it anymore. And he felt he had to do something. You know, when all he really had to do was worry about his children. I mean, this man had no job. He didn't have to pay no rent. He literally, all he had to do was be a dad with a woman that, you know, he really didn't even have a relationship with anymore. His only job in life at that point was to be a dad, and he couldn't handle it. And
Jason,
there are people like that.
Jason, I have a quick question for you before I go to Sarah and Elijah. Your hand is up. Did you have something to say too? Because I'm going to go to you guys real quick.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Jason, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So does that mean there are 2 different women that you knew that were going through?
Oh, there's more than that. But those were the 2 most extreme cases. Yes.
The reason why I asked that was because, as you saw with one of the recent posts I put with Kevin Samuels, where he made the comment to his audience, is that he had never experienced domestic violence. And that's fine. That's his own opinion, his own perspective. But I think what's interesting is that I think when he made that statement and when I put it in my post, and even though I showed the various women who lost their lives and the young woman who was assaulted in the second video, it was very ingrained in the men who came on the page to say it is not something that happens often. It's like they do not want to hear that it actually happens often. And look at the fact that we're in this group right now. I know it's just 5 of us, but we're in this space, and each and every one of us can give a story about abuse. So it just shows me that, and which I know already, that abuse is much more prevalent than we want to admit. Sarah, before I go to you, I'm gonna jump to Elijah, and then we'll go to you.
Okay, so exactly. Thank you. It happens so often, and I think part of that issue is it's not reported, and in the African American family, especially in the South, they hide it, and when abuse comes to the woman or towards the children, but. One thing I wanted to share, I had a friend, and when you're looking from the outside in, for me, I tried to be there, as a friend, and just be supportive and encouraging, because you don't know what to do, because they don't want you to say anything. They don't want you to call the police or anything of that nature. And sometimes you may not know actually if they're actually physically abusing them. And my great friend from college, I believe she was in an abusive relationship. She was a very strong, opinionated woman, and then she met this gentleman. She was from Grenada and he was from Jamaica, and then all of a sudden, the relationship with all her friends changed. And I never forget the day she called me and said, "Oh, I can't be your friend anymore," and hung up. And I was just like, what happened? And I started reaching out to other people, and they was like, it's the guy. He's very controlling. And I found her again one time after that. They were not together. I guess they were separated. And I would say maybe 3 months later, I got another call exactly the same. And I have never heard from her. And it's been about 10 years. I had no way of finding her. I know she went back to Jamaica because I believe that, from what somebody told me, he had the kids, so she had no choice. I never saw bruises on her, bruises on her, but I do believe she was being abused. So then you have those situations as well.
That is true, because I do recall reading somewhere that many times in the Black community, we don't report it. And then the funny thing is, there is a video. I might show it at the end if we have time, or I might just send the link and then attach it to this video, so that when people are watching the video on YouTube, they can see it. But they did say that sometimes when Black women report it, people are expecting to see the bruises, but because we have a darker complexion, not all of us, but because we have a darker complexion, it doesn't show up as easily or right away. A lot of people tend to question the validity of the assault, and upon other things that occur that causes, from what I noticed, that causes women to not want to talk about it, especially the gaslighting that sometimes they experience from, the police don't care a lot of times. Sometimes even the families, like the one person that I knew who went through sexual assault from someone close to her, the family actually was basically saying to her that she was lying. And it was actually connected to the story that I spoke of earlier with the man who was assaulting his wife. He actually assaulted her sister. But Sarah, I'm going to go to you because you had your hand up.
Yes. So I definitely understand. So this neighborhood that I live in, that I've grown up in, I've lived here for over 20 years now. There's a neighborhood here, and there's one across the bridge adjacent to us. And there are stories of abuse which have taken the lives of the children, the entire family, from the hands of the man abusing the woman, when the woman, ran away with the kids and eventually went back. I think he killed himself along with the children. And I think that the mother killed herself as well. The story is very prevalent in this neighborhood. It's called Thorncliffe Park. And here in Flemington Park and Thorncliffe, there is a lot of mental health issues. And I've grown up with people around me with severe mental health issues. So when we talk about how the police doesn't solve anything, I know this. I just know that there are things that we try to do and things don't happen. So what I wanted to kind of talk about is the solution to these problems and how we actually can empower ourselves to do so. But I have to take a few steps back. So prior to this panel, I did rewatch a video from a beautiful melanated couple called Witness Our Divine. The title of the video is Hate, Our Keys to Liberation. So to kind of summarize what they were talking about, which will connect with this topic, we have to first understand that we need to decolonize the definitions in order to liberate our people, since our oppressors, the colonizers, have used definitions of words as power. So we have to begin to reclaim this for the betterment of the entire world, because these instances are not only in the Black community, they're in Caucasian communities, Indian communities. The story I mentioned was an Indian family, I believe, and so on and so forth. So the word hate, the European view of hate, or the colonization of the word hate, is bitterness, irrational rage, directionless mental disorder. The African view of hate is righteously enraged, the wrath of the divine that opposes injustice and seeks ma'at. Whether we want to speak on it or not, hate is ingrained in every single person. When you love something, you hate something else. If you love your people, you will hate people that are trying to disrupt, disturb, annihilate your people. So the reason why the colonizer has placed that worldview is to create taboo, this sort of taboo against hatred, which originated in slavery. Before the physical act of buck breaking, which is one of the intergenerational curses that we deal with, the mental had to be in place, the mental aspect of it, the psychological torture that was imposed by these new sets of laws that were in direct contradiction to African laws. The Ma'at, which seeks balance, says, I will not be angry without just cause. Without just cause means that you can be angry for the betterment to seek back balance. And a prime example is 1804, the Haitian Revolution, which pushed out the colonizers, the French, from the abuse, the systematic abuse they were setting on our people. The colonizer says, I will not be angry, period. Now, as we all know, they don't follow those rules, but why did they set that in place? To confuse everyone, not only African people, but people globally. So what happens? We have something called displaced hate, and it is the leading mental health crisis. And to quote Witness Our Divine, it causes abuse, addiction, alcoholism, neglect, obesity, suicide, and blonde wigs, etc. Now, some of these things may not be something that we are in agreement with. I know a lot of people will have dissonance when it comes to this. But what we have to understand is we have to attack this holistically, as we did as Africans when we were practicing our traditional systems. And this is how we get out of this. For an example, I am a student of a chief elder who has practiced and has been initiated in northern Ghana. And because of this, I am learning the power of rituals. I know it is taboo, demonic, all of that stuff. I'm not going to get into that right now for time's sake. But Let's say that you also put yourself as a student and empower yourself, embolden your family members. You may be able to perform a ritual to get rid of the abuse that you see in your family. May they be the abusee or the abuser. If you are able to perform that ritual on their behalf, that begins to clear it. You are now empowering yourself to not be at the mercy of life and to see these things happening around you. You are now able to at least employ something that will actually bring back balance slowly and slowly. We are too in the physical realm. We need to be back in balance with one foot in the spiritual realm and one foot in the physical realm. This is why we are seeing the ripple effect of pain and suffering amongst all people all over the world. Because African people are supposed to be back in their spiritual traditions. They need to go back to their elders and get their divinations done and to clear these things out. Once that is done, then the world will change completely. These cycles of pain and abuse, the physical torture, the self-hatred that is employed. These people who are engaged in these things hate themselves. And now it is time for us to get back into our spiritual traditions, to love ourselves again, to go back into the way that we originally were and originally are, because that is our true nature, even today.
Beautiful. Well said. That was needed. That was absolutely needed. You know, coming from the root of the issue, because it is very spiritual. It is very esoteric, and it has materialized itself into the physical, into the flesh. Everything that you said is spot on. And, you know, adding to what you said, we see, and it's so funny, Sarah, that you mentioned that, because that was another thing that came up in the post that I put up in regards to the domestic violence. And just a heads up, it says on my screen 7 minutes that we have left, so we'll try to squeeze in as much as we can before we end off. But one of the things that occurred when I put up the recent post with the Kevin Samuels and his statement, there was a woman, a very popular pro-black, quote-unquote famous woman on Instagram, who is very quote-unquote spiritual. She came on my page and she was very upset with me. She said, "I'm going to unfollow you for posting a video of a black woman getting assaulted. I do not want you purchasing my services." And what else did she say? There's something else that she said that I thought was very interesting. And the thing that hit me was that in my mind, because of the fact that I had to live with someone with schizophrenia, I saw that it is very important for us to, oh yeah, that's exactly what she said. I saw in my life that for us to resonate higher, we have to be very truthful within ourselves. We have to be able to recognize the root cause, like what Sarah was explaining, and figure out how we got to this point. And the thing that's very interesting is that we can look at, exactly, it starts with ourselves. We can look at the truth in our face. Like, for example, seeing this assault of the elderly woman who's 55, the young 17-year-old woman who got killed by her boyfriend, you know, the other post that I put up. We can see this in our face as you melanated people, and we have a way of pretending like it doesn't happen. But then as soon as we see it happen in other races, other groups, we're so quick to like say, oh yeah, you see, we start acting like the colonizers and start projecting this kind of behavior like we are so perfect when we have so many imperfections within us, within the body itself. And so I tried to explain to her, and a lot of people that came on the page, I said, I already know that this happens in other races in other groups, right? But the problem is we're not looking at our issue. We're not trying to figure out how we can start cleaning out the infected souls that are amongst us so that it doesn't keep going down intergenerationally, epigenetically, scientifically. It doesn't keep passing down itself spiritually, because that's exactly what's happening. Exactly. It's just all this deflection of, oh yeah, you're trying to make the black man look bad. You're trying to make black people look bad. But it's like, we're living in the age of technology. We all see what's happening. We cannot ignore it. And the messed up thing about it is that when you're abusing, especially, I'm not saying when you abusing men has no effect. That's not even what I'm going to say. But when you're abusing a woman, there's a different kind of trauma that we hold within us, especially for the fact that we are the portals to other dimension between the birth, the spiritual realm of giving birth into the physical realm. And as this assault, is pressed upon us, we then imprint that trauma into the DNA, which then passes down into the children, both the male child and the female child. And they grow up and they continue the cycle. Like, I think, Nancee, you said that you didn't know your brother was so affected until you had left your children with them. So the thing is, Sarah, what I really appreciated was, did you say that, Nancee? Was I wrong about that?
Yes.
Okay. The thing that I appreciate, Sarah, with what you said, Elijah, your hand was up. Did you want to add anything? I'm not too sure if he's there. Are you there? No? Okay, he's not there. Or probably he's there. But the thing is that I appreciate with you, Sarah, like you said, is that the solution to a lot of these things. And I think a part of the solution is really to pull out the problem, because the problem has been buried for so long that it's like we really have to start, when you're decluttering, you have to start pulling out all of this stuff. And I think that we can do that by having these discussions and start to add things together more and more. So we have about 2 minutes left. Did anybody want to throw in anything before we jump off of here?
Yes, I just wanted to add one quick little point to this. Definitely, it is important for us to get back into our traditions, and that does start with really looking into our self-hate and how it is affecting the entire world. Because if we are the first peoples and this is the chaos that is coming, imagine everyone else. And I wanted to really highlight the importance of spirituality, because these what we call curses, can actually be removed. They can be reversed, and it does take a lot of power, and there are some powerful elders that are waiting for us. But as my chief told me, in Africa, the spirits of our bloodline, these powerful beings, a part of our ancestry, are literally waiting for the diasporans to come to get back into their shrines to begin the work again. They're literally waiting for us. Our solutions are still intact. Meanwhile, many other people of other races, their traditions are almost destroyed completely, or there's no way to remember them. The only way for the entire world to get back to where it is, and this is why we have so much dissonance from other races or colonizers, is because they want to keep the same facade going for forever and ever. But in order for the world to be back to balance, for the destruction that we're seeing, not only with the physical abuse, but in the abuse of nature, the abuse spiritually, the mental abuse, the war in schools, and all of that stuff, is for us to get back into our traditions and to work with our ancestors again properly. Because I know we talk about ancestors a lot and we haven't actually started doing the work, but this is what we will have to do in order to get back to where we need to be.